Join me as we talk all things true crime.
Made contact and shattered.
Liberty, a missing 4-year-old. The parents have called in and the mother has went for a walk, came home, now they can't find her, they've been yelling for her.
Turn it over to another agency. Let's get some help.
Where are your kids? They've been missing for 4 months. You have nothing to say? You're over here in Hawaii? Chad, where are Lori's kids?
4 were stabbed multiple times and were likely asleep during the attack. Some had defensive wounds.
Most of them had just like one that was the lethal stab wound.
Hello, how's everybody today? Thank you for being here. I am in my office. I have the house to myself, so I'm able to stream up here where normally I have the camera off and I'm streaming early in the morning. I think summertime schedule is a little bit different for everybody. So the early Monday morning lives will probably be transitioning to some lives in the PM. I don't really have a set day or time, so I'm just kind of winging it. How's everybody doing in chat? Can everybody hear me? So I just wanted to say that, yeah, I won't be going live Monday morning tomorrow. I am looking into the Long Island serial killer case currently. And actually, this information that I have in this stream, I forgot to. Hi, Shay.
Hey, how are you?
I'm so glad you're here. I normally don't have guests. So I was going to say, like, I have some special guests tonight. So thank you for being here. And I was, this information I forgot to mention on my Monday stream. So I just put it together and I figured you're one of the best people to kind of talk it through live, as well as CDT. Whenever she can join, she will be joining as well. So that's what we have in store. And thank you so much, Shay, for joining. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
Awesome. So thanks. I see Mel Mac. I'm just going to say hi. Jordan, hello. I saw Criminality, Tony, everyone's here. Thank you guys for being here on short notice, sort of. I kind of threw this all together. So yeah, I just have some things. I'll wait to kind of get into a lot of it, but let me just look through my notes. Basically, there's just some stuff that I've noticed has like changed. Some information in this case just has kind of flip-flopped. And I just find that like interesting and unsettling at the same time. So I've put together like pages of the PCA and clips of interviews and all that for us to kind of go through. Some of the topic is like Doordash and the Uber driver and all that we'll get into as we go on. I don't know did you guys see the new document or whatever showing the Facebook sealing, that there was like information from Facebook that was like gone, like put through the courts that has been sealed. Did you see that?
I did. I didn't get to like read through it fully, but I heard a synopsis of it.
Yeah. So I'm curious. A lot of people are speculating that it might be Papa Rogers information. If that's him, do you think it is?
I've gone back and forth because I felt like at first I thought it could be him, but then I kind of thought it could be Justin. So that's in the mix.
That's the problem when, hi, Willie, it's good to see you, and Legendary. Hi, everybody, for joining. That's the thing when people just join cases and kind of, I guess, troll them in a way. You don't know, like when stuff gets put out on the internet or Reddit, whatever, you're just like, is this legit or is this just that troll?
Right.
It happened literally in every case. Thank you, Alex. Thank you so much. And Alex Erickson had a really good live stream last night. That was really interesting in case you guys want to check that out. Just catching up on true crime community and everything going on. But
that was really good.
I'm thinking while we wait, I play the court TV segment, like about them holding on to the house. What do you think? I don't know if you've seen it, but I haven't really watched it. I figured we'll just fill the time with that while we wait for Kelly and to go through stuff, if that's okay.
Sounds great. I haven't seen it actually.
So Monday, my live stream was all about me feeling like they should hold on to the house. And I don't know. After I talked it through with chat and like everyone, I was like, well, maybe there really is no evidentiary value to it since it's been taken apart. Like people were saying they took baseboards out, etc. And I'm like, I started the live stream and titled it, they need to not demolish it or whatever. And then after the live, I was like, well, I guess like what would be the point if everything's so different about it? And then I think it was like the day after they came out saying like, okay, yeah, we're going to hold on to the house a little bit longer. So now I'm just like, I don't know what to think. I'm like, what is the point in a way? Like, why would we need to hold on to it if it's not even the same setup? Like, how do you feel about the house?
I feel like we should hold on to it because I feel like you're like damned if you do, damned if you don't, and I, even though I understand that it's not going to be in the same condition as when everyone was living there, the students' belongings are going to be out. Maybe just the physical location, if they do go visit and seeing kind of where, like proximity of driving, things like that, like
Yeah.
parking. That's kind of more where I'm at on it.
Hi, CDT. So glad to
Hello.
see you.
I know. It's good to see you. And hello, Shay, and everybody in chat.
Hey,
So what do
CBT.
you guys like? What do you think, CDT, and what does chat think? Should they hold on to the house? Like, are you guys happy they're waiting till October-ish? But that's the thing is like, is the trial even going to be on time? Like, why are they like holding on to it to just October? And I don't know.
I'm a little back and forth on that. I can understand both sides of it, and I can understand if the jury were to go there, obviously, why it would be important to kind of want to know the layout, what you can hear, what you can't hear. But again, at the same time, as gruesome as this crime was, I mean, are they really going to want to walk in there, even with the things removed? I just wonder, like, what the state of it is. And then, like you were saying, with certain things removed, would that even be an accurate representation of how it was the morning of the murders? But it does seem like they're hanging on to it until October at least, right?
It seemed, I mean, that's what it seemed like the new statement. I guess we'll play this court TV thing and he'll probably walk us through it. Actually, let me turn it up the speed a little bit so that we don't have to sit through the whole thing. But I just think it's everyone online, like, because I share my stream to the Idaho groups and all the comments were like, they should hold on to it. And there was a very small percentage that was saying like, they've used like hazardous materials in there the jury can't be exposed to. There's like signs of asbestos or something like in the house itself that has been like torn up. So I don't know. It's just Julia asked, they removed the floors in the house. Apparently, they've taken out like baseboards or molding or something. That was the rumor. And hello, Titanium Built. And thank you for becoming a member, Just Dawn and Glowbug. So let's just play this court TV thing. It just seems like you said, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. Like there's a lot of people that are like uproared about them taking it down. And then there's at the same time, like you said, there's just what would be the point in presenting it if it's been altered, unless it was. My thing about it is like they're trying the timeline, which is sort of what I want to lay out and talk to you guys about, is like the timeline in this case seems sort of tight, like for the amount of time that they're alleging that Brian was there inside, all this stuff going on. It's very small of a time frame, in my opinion. What do you guys think?
It is a really short time frame. I mean, it's been kind of hard to digest, but everything that I at times where I think it's not possible, it can be possible. So I have a lot of questions. Like I'm really anxious for court. I want to see all the evidence and understand the timeline better. That's been I don't know, I guess it's been like the humdinger, whatever we're going to call it for me. That is really peculiar.
I agree. And that's something that I've said since the beginning when they started to really narrow down the timeline. Now we have from where his car was moving, allegedly, his white car, and then to where it's leaving. And it is really short. And I'm just like with the house, people are on both sides of it. I was watching some retired detective on TikTok, and he's like, well, with a K-bar knife, and if he went in there with the intent to, unalive them, it would have been possible. But then we had first heard they were all asleep. Then we hear Xana fought. And so, yeah, I think it is possible, but at the same time, it just also does feel pretty fast. And that's an interesting component, is that tight timeline. And I really am curious where he parked. That's something we don't know yet, unless I missed that came out or anything. But I know that's
no, it's just been speculated that it was that back parking lot area, and that's going to be maybe, which kind of ties into like you should keep the house, because that the jury is going to want to see like the time it takes from someone to walk into the back door, allegedly, et cetera, go upstairs. Like all that's going to have to be like looked at on a stopwatch practically. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But since you're here, actually, I don't have to fill the time with court TV stuff. So we'll play that last. So right now, let me just play my edited stuff. It's not like put together like I normally do. Like I'm going to have to pause it and kind of just go through the pages with you guys, like just free flowing. Like I told everyone, this is sort of thrown together and just winged. Thank you so much, Alex. I really appreciate that. We love you. So let me just pause.
We believe we have our guy, the one that committed these murders.
We hope that they picked the right guy, and that gives us hope, and we haven't had hope for a long time.
The dramatic music. Okay, so I want to just start off with the screenshot of the PCA and pretty much just get into the Uber and DoorDash aspect of it. Actually, that's the thing, is like this whole live stream, I'm going to be switching up screens a lot. So just bear with me, guys. It's really not going to be as organized as usual. So obviously this is the page that describes a private party, and then it's redacted, reported that he provided a ride to Maddie and Kaylee. And that is around sorry, it's so small. I'm like looking 1:56 a.m. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry, guys. My eyes are so bad with these like documents. But so the thing that we were kind of discussing behind the scenes was, well, actually, even in Melissa Jade's chat, like we kind of talked about how I had heard, like people had heard that at first, and I know Kelly, you've touched on this detail too, that it was described as an Uber company. And then all of a sudden that got changed. Like, no, it wasn't Uber. It was a private party through the school. If you guys remember that. Hang on, let me switch up. So then this article, I just am trying to point out like the stories that have changed. And hold on, sorry.
Yeah, but I do remember that, how it first came out as an Uber and then like a ride share service. And it makes me wonder, is that just the verbiage that Olivia used and not necessarily that she thought it was an Uber or whatever? But it is interesting to see how it kind of evolved over time.
Yeah. And what I love about your analysts of things, and Shay as well, is like the attention to detail. And hello, Riddler and everyone else. Roxanne, thanks for being here. Sometimes like we look at things and we're like, are we just overlooking it? Like this was on November 18th. So just a few days after. And, this is where they're saying the roommates were unharmed, but could be key to the investigation. And then it goes down. And then, of course, you know, Kathy Maybutt is quoted in here as lots of blood on the wall. Someone must have been angry, blah, blah, blah. That statement she made. And then it goes down and I'm looking and it says something about how they corrected it themselves here. So it was already being reported that it was Uber. And then here it like says, as soon as I find it, that it was changed to, okay, yeah, here it is. While police initially said Gonsalves and Mogan took an Uber home from the food truck, an updated statement Friday said the two used a private party for a ride home from downtown. So I think even to me, like you said, like sometimes things are just like it's free flowing, so statements get mixed up or whatever. But it's to me, it's just noteworthy that even the news is saying like at first it was reported by police and then they're saying this. Like it's just a bunch of things added together that have made this whole case sort of strange. And the Uber aspect, while just a small thing, it's like, but why? Why did that have to change? Like, why did that detail have to change? And people get confused just on how they got home. You know what I mean? I'm trying.
Absolutely.
And another thing that I'm kind of hung up on, and please feel free to correct me or help me a little bit, because if you know, I've kind of taken a step back and not really been researching, but I did research very heavily at the beginning of the case. But anyway, so what bothers me is how they came out with the one time frame of when they believed the murders happened. And they stated it as pretty factual, if my memory serves correctly. But then we get the affidavit and the Uber or Uber Eats, DoorDash. The DoorDash order from Xana is after that time. She was on her phone on TikTok after that time. So it just feels like the DoorDash should have been something, in my opinion, that they had that time for. So I just really, that kind of trips me up too, is how there was something so obvious as this DoorDash situation and a time they gave for that, but yet that was after the original time that they had put the crime happening. Sorry to kind of change the subject, but I feel like that's interesting as well.
No, you're fine. Because actually, I mean, the whole DoorDash aspect kind of plays into this whole very short timeline. And if he's circling the neighborhood up to 4 times before he enters, right? He goes around 3 times and then the 4th time is his entrance, allegedly. Mm-hmm. So it's just mysterious how the Uber driver gets in and out. A couple hours later, he's circling around allegedly. And then 4 a.m. comes around. All this stuff is happening at once. She's on TikTok. Kind of what I'm trying to show too is like, we don't get much information in the PCA at all about DoorDash. And what you guys have pointed out over and over, and I've kind of just, same with the Uber thing, like them saying Uber at first, I kind of chalked it up to Olivia just misspoke. She doesn't know. And that could be the case. Like she just doesn't know. But it's just the fact that, it's just all very weird. Like that's the only thing I wanted to vent was like all this stuff pointing out today. It's like, I don't know exactly what it means, but it's just very weird. And here it says, potentially they are witnesses. And this is in reference to the roommates. Potentially they are victims. And this is quoted from ISP officer Aaron Snell. Potentially they're the key to this whole thing. And I mean, to say they're the key to this whole thing, and then in other statements, which I'll show you in video form, the prosecutor Thompson has stated, they're the key to things and all this stuff. Like, and then when we get ridiculed for kind of pointing our finger, raising our eyebrow to the DM and BF, it's kind of a very strange element also in the case, because it's like they didn't hear, all this stuff happening. And then come to find out she had seen him. And it's just a lot of mystery. And I think going back and looking at this article from the 18th, not even a week later, it's saying potentially they are victims. potentially they are witnesses. At this point, they knew like Dylan's interviews and Bethany's. And I almost feel like there's, and I know you guys have said this also, inconsistencies maybe between their stories. Like something's not adding up. And when I play these clips about Steve talking, he sort of says stuff like, it just re-listening to it, I think you guys will understand where I'm getting at once I play it. But here Fry is saying they still believe it's a targeted attack, but of course they're not telling anybody why, which also leads me to think that there's something at the scene that kind of screams it, or evidentiary value, maybe in a phone or something that kind of lays it all out. Like, okay, this was a vendetta because of this. What do you guys think?
I personally thought that the targeted attack was because perhaps one of the victims did have more significant wounds, and that there was 2 people left alive. So that's kind of where I felt like the target was coming from, an explanation. But the Dylan and Bethany stuff has always confused me, because I went back and like re-listened to the pressers, and I was taking in the information of the roommates were downstairs, they weren't tied up, they weren't in bondage. Like, I don't know, it's just like really weird when you go back to like the first couple days and you're trying to like process everything, is like, how significant was this, and did it just kind of get hushed up because they needed to move forward in the investigation and not release anything,
Yeah, definitely. And it's just an element also, like not having the 911 call released and then putting so much emphasis on that being a key element, which Thompson is quoted as saying in this Inside Edition interview. He pretty much says that that's like a huge key element. And in a lot of cases, the 911 call isn't significant. Like, I was thinking about it and about other cases, and like we've gotten so many 911 calls released to us before and after trials. And some of them don't really add much to the investigation, in my opinion. And it's just for them to say like, this one is pretty big, like in the investigation, I'm like, why? You know what I mean? It's just add like a whole other element. Like, it's not just the fact like, oh, they can't release it right now because they'll wait till trial. Like, there's something in that 911 call that is very key to this whole thing, I feel.
Yeah, I mean, could it be describing the scene that they encountered? Could it be how possibly they were handed off a phone? I don't know. I mean, I'm really curious.
And I think it's going to be very interesting, because they say that multiple people spoke to 911. Is that correct?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's going to be very interesting to see how many, because obviously multiple is more than even a couple, in my opinion, but we'll see. And yeah, what was said, and like you were saying, Shay, maybe it did describe some like intricate kind of details that aren't out there yet.
Because it says right in this article, I'm not going to switch screens again, but I have it on my screen. And in regards to the 911 call this early on, it just pretty much says 2 other female roommates were found unharmed in the house, authorities said. Moscow Police Chief Fry declined to say if they were able to provide an amount of the killings provide an account of the killings or say who called 911. So at this point, less than a week later, they're not even saying that it was made from inside the house and all that. So it was very like tightly sealed, every little detail about 911, which to me isn't always the case in cases. Like, you hear, remember Debbie Collier and all these other cases, like whether they were homicides or just death investigations, whenever they spoke about 911, it was like they described exactly who called it, what time. Like, I just can't recall a 911 call that's been so tightly kept, like sealed. So I'm just so intrigued by it, and not more so than just wondering like who called, but it's just, I mean, obviously everything that's said in that 911 call. In regards to, before I forget, the private party that dropped them off, another detail that CDT pointed out early on is when the time difference, pretty much, because every police report or statement at this point was saying that they got home around 1:45-ish.
Yeah.
So it's just her when Olivia came out and she was so adamant, like, no, that's not the right time. So it's been changed from Uber to private party, and the time it has been different. So if we're talking about a time frame in the killings, like already to me, like it seems like the prosecution will have to lay out. And I'm not saying that I don't trust this timeline or that it's not possible. I'm just saying that like already we've had conflicting statements about times, and the jury's going to want to see minute by minute how everything has been laid out, because those interviews are out there, like on Fox or whatever, wherever Olivia said it, and they're saying it over and over that the timeline has been a little bit off, or you know what I mean. So I'm like, I know the jury's supposed to have like no knowledge prior to being on the trial, but it just is already been very weird and wishy-washy about the timeline.
And I actually just sent a video in our chat, but when they sat down with Chronicles of Olivia, and they said that they saw the ring video and it was 1:56. And that's why, again, they were so adamant they wanted that time correct. And so I just go back. If they saw the ring video of the girls getting dropped off, what else did that ring video show? It's just very interesting how these times were off at the beginning, and it like you said, why? And again, even if they are smaller things, and it was just a matter of like Uber versus rideshare, it is just interesting to kind of think about.
Yeah, and I go as far to wonder, why would they redact the private driver's name and the Idaho documents, but not for Washington or Pennsylvania? That's just weird to me.
Yeah.
Why were they in cohesion?
Yeah, and that's the thing that I just switched screens, which is this is the Pennsylvania screenshot that you sent me of the same page of the one that we had just had on the screen, showing the information about the private party that dropped them off. And again, I redacted it myself because I'm like, well, I don't want to just dox this person. What if it was like a clerical error? You know what I mean? Because you can pull up the PCA, for those who don't know, through Pennsylvania website as well as the Idaho government site. And in the one for Idaho, they've taken the name out completely. Like, see how it says a private party, Eric, and his last name starts with a G. On the previous page, it was completely redacted. So, is this just a clerical error where they're just like, we forgot? Or is it more? Now, in addition to that question and just the oddity of that, it's almost intriguing to know that the Doordash information is completely mysterious in both PCAs. There's no name given. It's just very vague. Is that right?
Correct. And I did recall that before the Idaho documents were released, that they did have a request to redact names. So that was specific. If you look, even Bethany and Dylan's names are redacted. Like they have the abbreviation. So I mean, it's further than that. I don't think it's as much as rules. I mean, it should be consistent because the case overall is tied together. Because what they've obtained from Pennsylvania and Washington influences the case for Idaho, in my opinion.
Yeah. So just thinking about that aspect, it's like they specifically, since they're sharing the information and all that working together, there was some communication between them that said, we can't let this information about the Doordash stuff get out. We're not going to even put it in there where we can redact it or not redact it. We're just going to leave that out because it's obviously a huge key in everything, in my opinion, which I didn't hang my hat on, which is interesting when you go through things and then you listen to other people's input. I don't think that Brian's the Doordasher, though, only because you need like phone activity in order to do that. And they said he had shut his off around 2 something. So to be 4 a.m. delivering to Xana, to me, it's like he would have had like a burner phone to be a DoorDasher then.
Absolutely. And I mean, I kind of went as far to think of it as both companies, DoorDash and Uber, are technically going to be, they're going to hire people as contractors, you know? And I was looking at it from like a legal perspective of like, why would DoorDash protect their driver's name but not the Uber drivers? Like, I mean, these are just like weird little things that were popping out. And that's kind of when I went back. I'm like, well, maybe, you know, the DoorDash driver is because they're at the scene of the crime, there's a witness, or perhaps there's intention and it's not coincidence that the DoorDash driver is there for reasonable doubt. I don't know.
Kelly, do you think that Brian could be the DoorDash driver?
As of right now, no. But I have never used DoorDash in my life. So I'm not you, Amber. No, just kidding. I know you use it a lot. But
That's fair.
no, but I lean towards he's not. But I do sometimes wonder if maybe if he truly was stalking them closely and there truly was a target and this and that. I mean, did he orchestrate the DoorDash driver? I mean, I've seen that theory, but then at the same time, I'm like, why would he do that? Because that would just be another body and witness there around the time. And so no, right now I just kind of lean towards it being a coincidence. And I do wonder if that DoorDash had some kind of dash cam or what they're going to say about the whole situation. I'm also very curious, you know, if she did consume the food, was it a contact delivery or no contact, things like that. There's still a lot of questions around it, but my personal opinion as of right now, I don't really think it was Brian who was the DoorDash driver.
Yeah, I'm thinking it's like Shay said, also like a very important witness.
Yeah.
The timing, or maybe not an eyewitness, but maybe he or she heard something.
Yes.
I'm just feeling like something's very important and key when it comes to DoorDash. And I don't think it's him being the DoorDash driver, but the verbiage about she received her order at X amount of time is interesting. Another element of everything in the PCA that I didn't really hang my hat on until I went back through things. And I'm like, well, you know what? I have to give that theory a chance that it states she received it because, you know, it says that, but it doesn't say that she ordered it.
Yes.
Which, you know, it's sort of like what we're talking about, how, you know, they purposely left out the information about, you know, who the DoorDasher was, whereas here they give us the name for the Uber. So it's like the things that they're leaving out obviously have some weight to it if you want to go that route. So they leave out the DoorDash person's name, and they leave out the 911 caller, and they leave out what else that we just don't know, but it's obviously key. You know what I mean?
And then,
who ordered the DoorDash? Those are like a lot of things that it's interesting that they've purposely left those elements out.
And if Brian, it does come out that Brian, and again, this is just to clarify, it's all alleged. We're talking as if they have the right suspect as of now. We obviously are waiting for the trial to see what happens. But if Brian is behind the DoorDash order, either as the driver or who ordered it and set it up, then that means he knew Xana's name. And again, from the beginning, I kind of thought maybe Xana, like Maddie and or Kaylee were the targets, and maybe Xana had been in the kitchen when he was coming back down the stairs. And then unfortunately, that's why he, you know, unalived Xana and Ethan as well. But if Xana is the one who received the order, like the PCA says, and Brian was behind that, that's again just a whole nother factor as to who was targeted, why, etc. How did he know? I still want to know how he even knew the house and the people in there existed.
And I'm totally with what Miss Behaven is saying right now on the screen. Is that information really relevant or needed for the PCA, though? And that's what I said about, like, when everyone was reading into she received it, it doesn't say she stated it, because I was just like, well, this isn't about the DoorDash metadata. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. This is about getting Brian arrested legally and if they had enough. So that's where I was kind of like, well, I mean, why would they have to put that in there? Same with where he parked. I was sort of like, that is mysterious that they didn't put that in there. But I'm like, well, maybe that just wasn't something they want to put out there yet. It's not like needed for his arrest, you know? But obviously we all want to know, like, what was his path? It just seems like it could be absolutely not needed at all and we're just reading into it, or this information was left out purposely. This page up here is just showing that it said that he turned his phone off around 2:47. So that's where I was kind of saying like, well, this kind of, unless he had a whole separate phone doing the DoorDash, I'm just at the point where I'm like, I don't think he's the DoorDash driver, but there is something to that DoorDash driver that both PCAs didn't even want a chance having to redact, because it's just not something they want to put out, in my opinion. Or it could be, well, it's not really relevant to the PCA, but I'm feeling like it's more than that. So this next little bit is an interview, I believe, with the Gonsalves family. Shay, did you want to add anything to the DoorDash and Uber stuff?
Sure, yeah. So I was kind of stuck on this piece of like, we know that his vehicle was within the area of the home between like what, 3:30 and 4:20. And I went back and kind of checked myself on this, but the officers that were at Banfield reportedly left that area around a little after 3:30. So my question was like, why would he be driving around? And I know that there was some theories about like, what if there was like a light left on, he was waiting for it to be turned off, and maybe it was because Santa could be waiting for DoorDash. But then I'm still kind of stuck on this fact of, if somebody just received a DoorDash, you know they're awake, so why would you enter? You know, like, wouldn't you be safer just waiting till like, they're asleep? So that's just something I'm still like really hung up on personally.
That's where I started going down the route of like, he had like a hangout, like knew somebody in the house that he was going to come over and hang out with or something. Like, it just seemed like he was kind of welcomed in, or allegedly. And this is just me thinking outside of what we kind of were initially kind of told to think, you know what I mean? Like, this is just saying a different theory. Like, if there was a connection to him in the house, like a personal one, like with anyone, maybe people smoked him up or something, or they just hung out a few times, or, you know what I mean? I just feel like maybe somebody was like friendly enough with him that when he came over that night, it was under the impression of like, oh, come on in.
Yeah.
But again, that's just thinking, because it's weird, the timing, DoorDash gets dropped off. There was like activity going on, like obviously with other streets and parties at night. So, I mean, it was 4 a.m., but it did seem like, even judging by that footage from the parking lot that we all analyzed last week, or the apartments, it did seem like there was still some activity going on out late at night. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And I think there's just one part that I'm hung up on this thing of, they're relying on Bethany and Dylan's like cell phone data for the time that the murders allegedly were committed and left the area. But I'm stuck on, well, if you have the Ring camera that heard the noise, so did the Ring camera not pick up this person at all? Like, I mean, I have so many questions about like the evidence and with this camera that's right next to the house, it's mentioned in the PCA. And I think that's real telling to me, how they got in, where they parked, if that camera didn't pick it up and it's not mentioned, because like video footage is going to be more concrete typically than an eyewitness type thing, because you could see that yourself and play it back.
And I think it's fascinating how they say that the roommates' phones were a factor in determining when the crime happened, because it makes me wonder, did they text each other like, I just heard this, I just saw this? In my opinion, I kind of feel like it's very possible that maybe Dylan left her room and went down to Bethany's room and stayed there till the early afternoon, because in the PCA it talks about how DM originally was on her second floor, or in her second floor bedroom. And it just really makes me wonder if maybe that's how, because I feel like, again, my opinion, I have a hard time with thinking, how could she walk out of her room and not see any blood? And maybe she didn't. Maybe she stayed in her room the whole time and it was Bethany, who was the surviving roommate, whose phone they called 911 from. I don't know. But to me, that is just really going to be interesting to see what was on the roommates' phones that helped investigators, use that data to help determine the time frame.
Absolutely.
Hopefully that made sense.
No, yeah, definitely. Because I've got that page to pull up too, because that's just another thing I wanted to point out tonight. Everything you just said, something is very key when it comes to the roommates. And obviously we've been thinking that and saying that, but in so many different ways, their phone. I mean, I'll show you the videos of them just emphasizing that aspect. And thank you for the gifted memberships and welcome all the new members. Tom N said he takes a plea deal. They have a lot more. They only mention the DNA at the bottom of the knife sheet because that puts him there. And B, he is the person that unlatched the sheath that held the murder weapon. He has no alibi. I could see this ending in a plea deal also. What do you guys think? Like, I'm not saying it wouldn't happen. A lot of people are like, he would never. And I'm like, he's standing silent right now. It's not like he's come out saying, not guilty, not guilty.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious if they're going to go for the alibi defense, because if he does, then he was required to provide it. So that was what, on the 14th he had to provide it?
I think the alibi is due the 24th, right?
I'm
pretty sure like that's the filing or something. I'm sure somebody knows, or
I got it.
But either way, it's like a plea for what Corey says. I think he'll plea. It's possible he could sign a plea deal.
Yeah, it's the 24th. You're right.
Maybe take off death penalty. I don't know. I'm just saying. And actually, House Huddle says, I don't think his ego would opt for a plea. And that's the argument a lot of people have been saying. Like, no way. I mean, people who went to school with him said he thought he was the smartest in the room, blah, 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 or, wanted people to know that. I don't know. And Jesse Lynn said that sheath didn't kill them. We don't even know if a K-bar actually killed them. I mean, that's fair. I mean, it is circumstantial. We watched that on my last live where Mark Garagos and another defense lawyer were on Megyn Kelly's show, and they were saying like, well, even with the touch DNA on the sheath, that's still circumstantial. You don't know when that got there. Say he was over there for Halloween or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, everything's circumstantial unless you have it on video of the crime being committed. I mean, that's even DNA circumstantial. It's just the layering of the circumstantial evidence that can prove can you prove beyond a reasonable doubt?
Right. For 12 people. And I think they have the right guy. I don't know exactly all the details. And honestly, that's another thing that sort of has changed. And I wanted to point out is the motive in a way. Like at first it was a target attack and somebody had a stalker, then they didn't have a stalker. And then it was Steve alluded to saying that he knew who the target was, but he couldn't say it. So, and then all of a sudden he does that interview on Court TV for her birthday. And he said something like, I think whoever did this was jealous of, or whoever they pick, or something along the lines of like, whoever they decide it was the person that he was jealous of what they had or something. It was like, wait a minute, what? It just seemed strange. Like not only has like the statement of Uber to private party has changed, but now it seems like they're kind of still figuring out the motive. Not that they have to prove it, but don't you think it would help?
And then, I don't know, it just still makes me wonder who was the target. Like, was it Ethan and Xana? Did he know Xana? I mean, but it does appear though that he went upstairs first based on DM and what she said in the PCA, but I'm really hung up on how and why they so quickly said it was isolated and targeted. And I think, Shay, it could be as simple, like you were kind of saying earlier, that two were still alive. And then it's like also, though, it's like, could it be deeper? Was there some kind of message, or have they found something in their phones that we don't know of yet? To me, that's going to just be really interesting to finally learn what, and if there was a connection, what exactly it was, when it started, when the first contact was, when the first search of any of the possible victims or surviving roommates, the address, whatever it was. That is like the biggest thing to me. I'm hung up on. I want to know.
I
Absolutely.
agree. Let me say hi to Seth and Nikki Rex. I just haven't seen them in a while, so I just wanted to say hi to them. Sorry.
Very good. I agree. I mean, there's a couple of things that like I got hung up on too, and they were interviews. And I think you pointed out in a documentary, but it was the Idaho State Police when asked like if there was any like blood or writing on the walls, like he couldn't comment on that. I thought that was kind of interesting. And then two, I went back and I've watched it several times where Ted Williams from Fox News is reporting that in his interviews with Kathy Mabbitt that it was a very, very bloody, gruesome scene. So I know like people keep saying, oh, they don't talk about like all the blood everywhere at the PCA. I'm like, they don't have to. You know, it could be contained in one room per se. And I'm kind of curious about the scene, the containment. Like, was there an indicator with something like that that made them feel that it was targeted? I don't know.
Agreed. And I would just like to know as well, like, what type of blood was there leading from upstairs through the living room area, down the hall to Ethan and Xana's room, and out of the kitchen? Like, was there a trail? Things like that. I know a lot of people are like, there is no trail of blood in the yard. Or I'm like, we don't know that though. We don't know that. There wasn't snow on the ground. We've seen pictures afterwards, but we just don't know.
Yeah, and there's like images of them taking pictures in that back area with all the leaves and stuff. Like they're not taking pictures for no reason.
Right. And Amber, I don't know if you can see it, but Nikki Rex has been a member for 15 months. And said, hi, beautiful, have missed being here. We love you, Nikki.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I'm trying to find Riddler to make him a moderator too, if he doesn't mind, because he's always showing support to the community. And I really appreciate him and all my moderators. So thank you guys all so much.
I was going to say, I also go far to say that like, I went back and I remember I was like, I heard about this like maybe the second or third day after the murders occurred. So I went and watched all the local footage, and they seem to not really have a lot of reporters over there at the time of everything happening. It was kind of on the hush. So what if there was evidence outside that they gathered quickly and cleaned up so it wouldn't be a media spectacle? I don't know. And I'm curious about that.
And in addition to that, remember when Anne got on board, and this is obviously weeks later, her team was very much focusing on that one window, weren't they? Like, weren't there pictures of them outside of that downstairs window?
Yeah. And didn't they expand the crime scene as well? Like days or a week?
To that parking lot.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's noteworthy.
And I was wondering if they started expanding it as they were getting witness statements, like from Dylan. But, you know, I'm curious as when you go back and look at some of the drone footage, like certain parts of the roof look a little bit cleaned off compared to others in the ladder there. And I've always kind of thought that was interesting. So I have a lot of questions. It could just be coincidental. It might not be. It's just a red herring, but a lot of questions if we really don't have media there on the first day and they're protecting the crime scene. We don't really know what was outside.
There's got to be something. No matter who it is, there's something out there. I mean, that they speak on him driving off quickly, and then we saw pictures of them kind of measuring stuff in the road. I mean, they have documentation of stuff, you know. Everything's just got to be laid out in an organized manner and kind of spelled out to this jury, because that's the thing is, like Jesse just said, it seems like there's holes all over. because obviously we don't have very much with the PCA and these little leaks that we're getting and documents through court where we're kind of analyzing things. But it does, like we're kind of pointing out, things have changed, like stories, stalker, no stalker, the list goes on, you know, and it's like, what is going on? Like people want to know, like why, because, you know, people even ask me, like in my family, when I'm at group settings, like, oh, what are you up to? What case are you researching? And I say the Idaho 4, and oh my gosh, that's so horrible, and blah, blah, blah. And then they say to me, but why did he do it? Why did he? And I'm just like, we're kind of still waiting on that. Like, isn't that kind of strange to kind of be left up in the air? And thank you so much, Seth. I can't thank you enough for your support for the channel all these years since the beginning. So thank you so much. I really appreciate you. And that just doesn't even say enough for how much I appreciate my members and subscribers and just everyone for watching. This case has just been kind of mysterious, but not only that, it's very like convoluted. Like somebody in chat earlier said, I thought Hunter called 911. And that's been the recent kind of rumor, or, you know, my source said this and their source said that. But like, obviously we don't know that 100%. I'm not saying he didn't call it, but I just am noticing, like through rumors and all that, like people think that they know, like same with that sunroof. They're saying that wasn't Brian's car that had a sunroof. And it's like, that wasn't even the right time.
Oh, and I actually went back to the police reports and pulled like the releases on that, and they provided two launchers, one with a sunroof and one without. So I think people are just kind of getting hung up on certain things, and I think time will tell.
Hi, Melissa.
Hi, how are you?
Good. I'm glad you got to join.
I know. I'm gonna mute when I'm not talking though, because I am driving and it's probably gonna sound like a train going by. So I'm gonna do my best.
You're fine. Was there anything you wanted to just add in before I play any clips?
No, just play and I'll add in as we go.
Okay. Anything you two want to say before I play these clips? The clips are basically just showing the difference in statements, everything we've been talking about. The timeline here, this picture is an official one from the Moscow police of the timeline when it first came out. So that's why this is up on the screen.
I have one thing, and hello, Melissa. It's good to see you, kind of.
Hi.
Hey.
Hi, Callie. It's good to see you too. It's been a while.
I know. I kind of just like took a long break. But I just want to say, at the beginning, before we knew, before the PCA came out, I was kind of wondering if maybe he or whoever had done this had brought a change of clothes. And in my mind, I pictured this person committing this act and then having a change of clothes and changing in the house. And now, again, with this tight time frame, I just don't feel like there would have been time for that. And from my memory, you know, different experts have all said that he would have been covered in blood after stabbing, you know, 4 people in the manner that it was done. So I'm just, again, going to be I'm very curious about any blood trails in the house and or out of the house.
Well, and I agree. And it was because my biggest issue was the slider door, right? That we don't see any blood transfer. And I would anticipate if you had to open it and shut it, especially with hands, obviously, that there would be some blood transfer, at least visible to the eye. It might be there. I don't know, but we don't see it in the photos. So, but we've heard that the door may have been left open, which makes a lot more sense. So he didn't have to touch it at all.
Yes, very interesting. And remember, didn't Olivia say very early on, they got home, took the dog out to pee, and locked the door? And that's another thing I kind of go back to, like, where did she get that info? Is that on a Ring camera somewhere of Murphy being let outside? And then maybe her saying there that they locked the door was just her kind of adding that in. It's not really, she knew that for a fact, but she assumed it, kind of thing. But I don't know, that has kind of been in my memory as well.
Yeah, she seemed surprised that it was unlocked, right? Or that they were stating that it was wide open or whatever.
Right, because she said that they locked
you
it.
always
And
would
like,
lock them and etc. So that is like, I I don't know if this is just what you were just saying, Melissa. I kind of was doing something backstage to see if criminality wanted to join. But were you referencing how the one neighbor said that the front door was wide open around 9 a.m.?
Was referencing the recently Daniel had said that, and Shay, correct me, I don't know if it was confirmed the door was open or they believed that the door was left open, the slider. Like whenever he made entry, he never shut the door. When he left, he didn't have to like open it up. There would be no blood transfer because he just walked right out and may not have even been shut behind him, meaning it was left open that entire time.
Yeah, see, there really is rumors through the police department too that have stated when we arrived the door was wide open, and then this news lady, I think from Fox, said that she spoke to a neighbor and around 9 a.m. the door was open. So
and that would be the front door. And we've heard that from the very beginning, but now it kind of makes more sense if, now that we know that friends were summoned, now that we know who found the bodies according to the Gonsalveses, and if they ran right out that front door, which I think is a good indicator where Bethany and Dylan may have been when the bodies were found, because it was the front door that would have been slightly ajar.
And don't you think it would have gotten cold in there in that case?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think it's a good factor as far as the smell, the odor. I believe that it would have been extremely pungent and strong over the course of 8 hours. But if that slider door was open, it would have dropped the temperature significantly, which would have lessened the smell. But I also think that would have been a huge factor as far as another reason why I think Dylan was the closest to that door. So if she was indeed in a room, I think she absolutely would have felt the shift in temperature. So there's a reason I don't think she went out.
And that's the thing is, like Mal just brought up, she took the words right out of my mouth. Like she said, both doors are said to have been open at some point from different people. And it's just another thing. Started out as Uber, now it's a private ride. Started out as they got home at 1:56. Come to find out they got home at a different time said by Olivia, So it's like, I'm just at the point where
Both
I'm like,
girls
now
were asleep, to one is asleep, to
yeah,
eyewitness, lots. Yeah.
All were found in their bed. No, some of them were found in their bed.
All were likely sleeping. Now some were sleeping. It's yeah.
And that's the problem that's what this whole kind of live is about, is just one, just to point out the lack of information on Doordash in the PCAs, comparing it to the names that were redacted about the private ride home. It's like they didn't even want to chance any of that information getting out about the name. So obviously that's got a lot of weight to things, whoever the Doordash is or whatever. But just everything is just very hard to kind of explain because everything has changed so many different times. And now other people have said, well, no, the door was seen open because the roommates ran out of the house screaming and all that. And it's like, but this was quoted by somebody from Fox talking to a neighbor at 9 a.m. So they didn't call 911 till almost noon. So whoever, this neighbor is that saw it open, it's just, and that's the thing. It's like, it seemed like the neighbor was saying it was the front door, the one with where they park, like with the wreath. But then the PCA and like, we're kind of speculating is he left out the slider and just didn't even bother shutting it. I don't know if you remember this, Kelly, but we were kind of talking very early on, like, did he shower before he left?
I do remember speculating on that.
It's just kind of like with no DNA of the victims found in his car and stuff. Now that we know that, I'm just kind of like, would that be absolutely not? I don't know.
I just don't feel like he would have had time when if you're just going off like what the camera saw that white car doing. I just do not feel like he would have had time anymore.
That's the thing, is it comes down to this shaky timeline in a way too.
Yeah.
It's going to be a lot for the jury to grasp, like he's a lanky guy, but look at Ethan. And
Yeah.
then we got to add in, well, they were drinking. Now we're going to have to know how much alcohol and all this stuff. Like, it's going to have to be explained that, like, no, he had no problem taking on Ethan or any of them because they were intoxicated. Here's their toxicology, blah, blah, blah. Like, all this is going to have to be so laid out for anyone to kind of believe it in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole, hold on, I've got the page, but pretty much where it says how initially or originally DM was up in her bedroom, remember? And then the reports came out that like they were down on the bottom floor. Just
Well,
another weird thing that has come out. And it's like, is that why the defense team was at that window down there? Like, is it like Shay speculated she climbed out her window because she was scared and went down there into, I don't know, that down that way? Or was there somebody climbing through a window? Because they've been examining these windowsills like crazy.
Well, and it's like that originally, and I agree that that's a huge, what does that mean? Does it mean that Dylan originally was asleep in that room and then switched rooms at some point? Or was she originally asleep at this time and then later went to sleep, back to sleep at another time? You could take it one of two ways. Same thing with the Doordash. Xana received the Doordash. Okay, well, it's true in both scenarios that if somebody else placed the Doordash or if Xana placed it, it doesn't clarify one way or the other. It's extremely vague.
I agree. And I feel like the originally could even just be meaning like she was originally asleep and then by a certain time she was up and alerted to what was going on, But yeah, I think it's going to be extremely interesting to go back and hear or see what the roommates' phones helped them determine.
Yes. I think that there is, because it's both of their phones. If it was one of their phones like Dylan's, then I'd be like, okay, maybe it was just her turning on her phone at some point, and even the phone having any type of activity is what's leading them to believe, okay, there was something happening at that time. She woke up for a reason. But it's both Dylan and Bethany's, which really leads me to believe that there was some type of communication going on between the two. But we know, at least from Chrissy, who has Kaylee's phone records, and she does not have the texts. But as far as any outgoing and incoming calls are concerned, there was no incoming calls from Dylan around that 4 a.m. time. Now, that doesn't eliminate text. That doesn't eliminate Facebook Messenger, Snapchat, things like that. But as far as actual phone call, there was no call to Kaylee.
Anything to add, Shay?
Well, I think this kind of goes back to what we were talking about, Amber, where we really felt like Snapchat was going to be a huge data point for around this crime. Because I believe that that's how they were chatting, and not through text and stuff.
It makes sense.
It does, yeah. But I think really where I'm hung up on is, I know you can't, it's hard to speculate like what Dylan would be feeling, but I've gone through my head thinking like, did she think she was just having a bad dream, woke up, went back to sleep? Would she black out drunk? I mean, I'm just making accusations. I've been in college before, Did you have to go to therapy to like kind of talk this out and figure it out? Was the phone data what kind of helped, clue in what her thoughts were? Maybe that could reason why like she didn't make an immediate call. She wasn't in the right mindset. I don't know. I mean, but there's a lot of questions.
I agree. And when it comes to DM, I do not accuse her of anything. It is what it is. But do I have questions? Absolutely. Have I had them from the beginning? Absolutely. And then even more so once the PCA came out, because a lot of people did try to say maybe she was just, heavily intoxicated and passed out, or thought she was hallucinating this and that. And again, I also lived in the dorms in college for 2 years and, did my fair share of partying. But my thing is just, if that's the case, how was she so clearly able to, report what she allegedly heard? it's okay, I'm here to help. Here,
Yeah.
I'm with the dog. And I do have to remind myself, though, that is not, we're not hearing her verbally say that. That is taken and put into the PCA by law enforcement. So
there's only a couple of words of hers that are actually within quotes. Just a
yes,
few
direct
words.
quotes. Yep. And so there's still just a lot of questions there for me.
Yeah, and I want to obviously support the victims, even the roommates, if they're they are key witnesses. Like, I'm going to show you Thompson, laying that out for everyone, and it's just, but I couldn't help but kind of try to make sense of it all and go down different avenues. I don't know. Obviously, nobody knows the extent of that night yet, and everything's going to have to be laid out. But everybody, even those who don't follow this case, once they hear about the roommates being in the house and not being harmed, I mean, it explains why we're all baffled by it. It's not a typical thing. And it's obviously another mystery in all of this. And thank you, Judy Ron, for being here and for your support and your expertise and everything you bring to the true crime community. You and Ed are just really vital sources of knowledge. So thank you so much for being here, and for everyone for being here. I'm very appreciative of everyone on panel too. So thank you so much, ladies. I never do panels. I always am behind the scenes. I don't know if you guys have seen me, Shay, but I know Kelly has, where I'm like in these group chats with her and I'm like, yeah, I want you guys to come up, and I like tell them a day and stuff, and then I just never like bring it up again, and it never happens. But I'm glad I actually put one together, and it was last minute, and I appreciate you guys. So let me just play these clips and then I'll touch back with you.
This came out from police. It gives a little bit of a timeline of where they may have been that night. Does that map mesh up with the timeline that you've been putting together?
Yeah, I'd say it's very close. I'd say if you have any closer details to kind of hone in, 145 could be very vague. Maybe it's closer to, 150. Let us know if you have anything concrete.
In terms of the details, you said it's close. Mm-hmm. Does that frustrate you that it's close?
I do, but right now we're still trusting authorities that, it's not going to be 20 minutes here or 15 minutes here that's breaking this. But yeah, I implore everyone, if they know something different, bring it to the police, because if they want to tighten up that timeline, we stand with that.
I just want to pause it real quick for two reasons. One, I remember Kelly talking about an interview with Olivia where she seemed kind of annoyed at the roommates. Before you explain that, Kelly, I also want to point out, imagine for a minute while we listen to some of these clips from the beginning, if it's come out at this point in their investigation, and this is just hypothetical, that the statements of the roommates aren't aligning. Because I almost feel like some of this timeline and stuff that they have holes in have stuff to do with maybe people's statements aren't like adding up. And this is just a theory. I'm just putting this stuff together, and it's kind of like, they'd want a lot of information about obviously who saw them, if you have any pictures and actual proof, because I don't know, I just get the feeling like stuff is going on behind the scenes with the roommates or somebody, like maybe at the frat or something, where it's kind of conflicting with another person's statement. And they kind of extended the time frame of when they wanted camera footage from it started out like, oh, we believe the crimes occurred between 3 and 4 or something, and then it was like, but we want, like later on it was like, but we were looking for more footage up until 6 a.m. So that got me thinking, like, did somebody like leave and come back, or like I'm just feeling like something's not adding up behind the scenes, possibly with people's statements. So I'm not saying that that's the case, but kind of get in that mind frame while I play these. Okay.
Well, and because we had like the defense who came out and said, hey, we want to interview Bethany, right? Because we believe that she may have exculpatory evidence. And none of us was expecting that, because it was very vague regarding Bethany in the PCA. Dylan was like an eyewitness. And so I've been curious, and you make great points, because I didn't really think of it in that aspect. But what if Bethany is the main witness here? We don't know really anything about what Bethany saw, heard, or experienced.
So I noticed one thing that's always stuck out to me, a good point, is that Bethany was the one that put Xana and Ethan apparently home at 1:45.
Yes.
That's what it states.
And she's the one who put them at the fraternity house the entire night. When initially the very first reports and words from law enforcement were that they were still wondering where Ethan and Xana were after the frat house. But then it comes out that Bethany puts them there as all night. And I'm like, why would that not on day one, that afternoon, police arrive and Bethany puts them there all night? Why did that get hung up? And then, yeah, that drives me crazy.
Yep. So
I agree.
And remember also, which I have clipped in here, Steve at one point is emphasizing, like, don't be afraid to come forward. You're not going to get in trouble at work and like all this stuff. And it's like, they're looking for additional things to back up somebody's story, like specifically, not just about what happened that night. Like at first, when I heard these statements, when it first started, it's like, well, obviously they want information. There was no suspect named, etc. But now I'm going back and listening. I'm like, they're like wanting more. Like they need like somebody to say, I took a selfie here and it's got this in the background type of information.
We do have a pretty tight timeline on Kaylee and Maddie, and it is close to what they are posting, but it is a difference, and that difference actually could be huge. I mean, it could be, it could not be, but 145, 159. So there is, and we have corroborated with my phone records, Kaylee's phone records, the driver that was driving them around.
And this sort of goes back into the timeline aspect and how they're having discrepancies between what we believe she got home at and what the police are saying they got home at. And just to bring up again, what were we just saying right before all this about
Bethany and
yes, Bethany, thank you so much. Just kind of the same thing as the Doordash information in the PCA. And again, it could be nothing, but it's like, are they purposely leaving out all these details because it's like bombshell information? And which is scary in a sense when like, what could she know? You know what I mean?
Yes, and that week of December 12th, it was very pivotal because that is when they said that they were the Moscow police on their YouTube page. There's the interview where they said they're going to go back and start re-interviewing witnesses, and then stuff starts developing more with, I guess, the case with Brian too. So a lot of questions.
Yeah, so you
really
have
concrete.
You have pulled video seeing the Uber driver dropping them off.
Yes.
You checked your phone records. With
Yes.
timestamps what
Yes.
time they got home.
I will say the one lingering frustration I have is the timeline. I know it's semantics, but my sisters got home at 1:56. It wasn't 1:45. I know it might not seem significant, but when we're looking for camera, when we're looking for dash footage, when we're looking for any of those things, I do feel it is valuable, and they did get home at 1:56. It was not 1:45.
She also tracked down their Uber driver.
I found neighbors' Ring camera footage so that I can verify that the Uber driver took her home.
So yeah, that's just another example of them reporting it was Uber, and then obviously it changed to private ride. Is it something? Is it nothing? This is the PCA page where it states what we had already talked about, that, originally, no, look, it says DM stated she originally went to sleep in her bedroom. Now, is it what we're thinking where it's like, well, she started off there and then she went downstairs at some point with Bethany, or is it she changed her statement?
Yeah, that's interesting. And I just have to say, it would bother me as well, because again, when in the interview with them, with Chronicles of Olivia, they state how they watched the Ring video drop Kaylee and Maddie off. And if that was my loved one, I would be the same exact way. I'd be like, I've given you this information. I've helped you with the phone records. Stop saying they got home at 1:45 when we know it was 1:56. Like, that stuff does matter. And I appreciate that Kaylee's family was vocal in all of that for sure.
Even the most minor detail can make such a massive difference. So I understand what their issue was as far as, listen, stop saying 145. It's not like those 10, 11 minutes could make all of the difference.
Yeah, absolutely agree.
And maybe not even in the aspect of the crime itself and that timeline, but what if it's just not adding up? They're throwing it out there that, like, what if they were told that they had gotten home at a different time by one of the roommates? And that's why the family's like, wait, no, like we said that it's this.
That's a good point too. And think about it like we're supposed, as of now, the entire crime, right, occurred within 10, 11 minutes. So it gives you a little bit of perspective of how much of a difference it can make and how much can happen within such a short period of time.
And also remember the interview they did with Brian Enton, and Steve is like, just share the solid alibi. And it makes me wonder, I know a lot of people at that point were still wondering about Jack. But then when you watch them on Chronicles of Olivia, they talk about, and Christy gets emotional about how they checked Jack. They like looked at his body and checked him over and stuff. And so at that point, I'm like, okay, they're not talking about Jack, in my opinion, when you're kind of looking at it chronologically in hindsight. Who are they talking about that they want the solid alibi shared for? Because they don't, in my opinion, likely did not know Bryankohberger existed at this point. So are they, were they still having questions beyond Jack and not knowing Brian? Is it somebody more closer that they wanted an alibi for?
Absolutely.
I'm definitely feeling like it's what you just said.
Yep, same.
I mean, I'm kind of one that I feel that because it does take so long to comb through all the tips and go through all the videos and get the precise timing, I mean, I truly feel like there is going to be camera footage that's going to coincide with what we've seen in the PCA, and possibly there will be a license plate in there at one point. Like it's pointed out that it wasn't visible in the PCA at one of the times, but that doesn't mean that they don't have it visible for other times. And that's been something that's kind of stuck with me. Because that puts him there like on that venture, because a lot of people have been stuck on like, if this is him, like why was his phone turned off? And I'm like, well, the cameras do matter.
And one thing I'm just seeing people say, like, well, what is your alibi if you're sleeping? And I think that's a totally fair question. I wouldn't necessarily want to have to prove I was asleep, but I can tell you that my phone would show a pattern. I don't turn my phone off unless it dies, which does happen. But you would see in my phone patterns, it's at my house all night. And that's where I think with BK and the PCA, and they're going to look at his phone records, obviously, we're going to eventually see the pattern and if it is different this morning of the murders.
Yeah, the time.
Like being asleep, yeah, how do you prove that? No one records themselves sleeping in case they're charged, accused of a murder necessarily. But I do think that the phone records is where it's going to be very interesting. And that can help, like Shay was saying earlier, circumstantial evidence. It's not just one piece, it's the stack of it all fitting together or not fitting together.
And this is on the screen just an example of earlier reports where they were telling us that they were found on the first floor, Dylan and Bethany. Do you guys remember that? Like it wasn't just this picture. Like they were saying it's been reported or police have told us blah 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 that they were on the first floor. So I mean
they said it in the press conference, I believe, one of the very first press conferences.
Yeah.
I'm pretty certain.
Like for that thing and just another example of stuff that has switched. And of course they're going to explain it at trial. Like they're going to lay out, well, this is what was going on, but it's still like very, I don't know. It makes you feel like they don't have everything together. Like, do they even know the actual weapon used in a way? You know what I mean? Like, I know they have the sheath, but actually they're going to argue that it might not have been used with that, or I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I agree. The defense is going to argue that for sure. And I'm a little worried about the coroner, Kathy, my butt on the witness stand. That's just me. I don't know. She's an interesting character in all of this as well. But yeah, that's going to be an interesting thing to see.
Yeah, she's definitely been one that's kind of gotten me a little riled up.
Yeah, same.
And remember when Xana's father pretty much said that he spoke with her around midnight and they were just hanging out at home?
Okay, now that I feel like could be interpreted two ways. I think the interview, because at first I was super hung up on that. And I was like, she was home at midnight. Her dad said it. But I think the way that the interview was spliced, I think he spoke to her around midnight. And then it kind of cuts to when she was killed. He's like, she was just hanging out at home with her boyfriend. I don't think that it necessarily is like strong enough to say that he 100% was saying when he spoke to her at midnight, she was at home. I kind of think it was two statements. Like, I spoke to her at midnight, everything was good. And then cut to like, she got killed when she was just innocently hanging out at home with her boyfriend. I don't think it necessarily was the same statement as midnight. She was definitely home. Like when I went back and really dissected all of that. But that's just how I take it as of now.
And I could see that. Let me just share that article too, because it has it quoted too. Like, I know that was I can hear the interview in my head right when you're saying it and when I'm reading it. And you're right. There was like a space in between where he says, I think midnight was the last time we heard from her and she was fine. And then it goes on to say the victim's father said he doesn't understand why his daughter and her roommates were killed. And then it's got his quote that's later in the interview. They were just hanging out at home. Xana was just hanging out at home with her boyfriend. It also makes me wonder hold on. Did that have anything, like, was there someone's statement that is conflicting with Xana's father's statement there? You know what I mean? So that's why they were like, we want more information about their whereabouts, because maybe somebody has said something else and it was not aligning. Like another example of like somebody misinformed the police maybe, or said something contrary to what a family member is stating, sort of like how Olivia was saying, no, we have information saying they got home at this time. You know what I mean?
I think that makes most sense. It really does. It'd be wanting to tighten that timeline up, but then at the same time, it's like when law enforcement was starting to get the data back, I mean, didn't they see maybe some inconsistencies with the statements and the data? You know, I mean, those are questions I have. Like, how credible does that witness become?
Right. That's what I mean, is I'm nervous that, like, what if it's a situation where they've put all their eggs in the surviving roommates? Because like I said, they've said in these interviews and articles, they're key. What if it comes out to like, well, actually, as the investigation went on, come to find out what they had told us, we have things including cell phone data that doesn't add up to it. You know what I mean? That's what I'm worried about. I'm not saying that's the case, but it's gotten me thinking, because the defense stating, well, we want to talk to Bethany. She could have exculpatory evidence. Duty Ron, thank you so much. She said, great conversation, ladies. We will hear more once trial starts. Until then, let the speculation fly. Kathy only determined causes and manner. The pathologist will be on the stand much more than Kathy. That's a good thing. If that's the thing, is like they need to kind of pedal their way back from the first initial things that were coming out, with the mayor coming out saying that it was a crime of passion. Like, that was a mistake, I feel.
Yeah.
I completely agree. Sorry, Kelly.
No, go ahead, Melissa.
No, I was going to say I completely agree. And I think that this is going to pose an issue, like, you know, because it's the defense's job to poke holes and highlight the inconsistencies. And as far, when it comes to like Steve and something, because I saw, Mal's super chat. And when it comes to Steve, I think Steve genuinely was following what was in the media and what police were telling him, which wasn't that much. So it's like the lack of communication. And I think that, because according to what Steve said, as far as the victims, like the surviving roommates, it doesn't really add up to what we know to be fact. And so I don't think that anything Steve said could be reliable. And I don't mean that disrespectful. And I don't think it's his fault, versus it's just a mix between social media, what you're hearing, what you're being told, what you're not being told. And I think that when it comes to Kathy Mabutt, though, there's a big difference between something that maybe somebody else got wrong versus what she said. I don't think she ever should have done an interview before even the autopsies were performed. I'm surprised that that was even allowed. But I think it's just going to be another thing that the defense pokes holes at and tries to discredit them for.
I completely
Anything to
agree.
add, Kelly or Shay?
I was just going to say, I completely agree. And I think that it's fair that he's going to also be emotionally, driven. And I can only imagine that, this is your worst nightmare, and trying to keep all the information together, not let it bleed between what law enforcement has said and you've heard from social media. I mean, it's got to be just a mind boggle. And I feel for him. And I did feel like there was a little bit difference, like when you see the interviews between the Galvez family and when Olivia or Christy are speaking. They are very like, no, it's this, like they correct the times and the facts and timeline. So I mean, I could appreciate that, and I do think there's a little bit of difference. And I felt like from some of the message that we were, told through another party was that, it is very emotional. And I think Steve had the best intentions, but we do, I think we have to take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah, I think he absolutely had the best of intentions. I think he just, I 100% agree. I don't fault him at all for it whatsoever, but I just don't think, because some people take every word he says and then uses it against him. Like, oh, you're contradicting yourself. Like, what does that mean? Versus, you guys, like, he's emotional. He's looking for answers more so than we are. And I think he had a mix of different sources of information, some less reliable than others. And he's probably even more confused than the rest of us.
Yeah. And which is why it's like, we try to just report back to and reference these, like, this is a statement, press release statement from early on. And this is pretty much going into the details of 911, which is another aspect that they've kind of, and while I do like to speculate, which I love speculating with you guys for sure, like I do like to circle it back to think, because we lose track sometimes of the basic facts, you know what I mean? And the whole 911 call has been something that's been super mysterious and also super speculated on, to the point where like people think that like they actually know what took place then, and nobody knows that yet. I'm trying to squint looking at the screen, so bear with me, but it pretty much is saying at 11:58 a.m. a 911 call requested aid for an unconscious person. Now I wanted to just pause there for a second and just remind you guys of Aaron Snell. When he did that interview once on Court TV, he said female at first, and then he changed it to person, and then that's been something that has gone back and forth on, because then the sergeant for Moscow reiterated unconscious person. So it seems as though like they don't want us to know that the call was about an unconscious female or something. Like, I don't get why they like stated that, and then and all the written stuff, and then after that interview it's been only a person.
Well, and I remember when I told you I went back to that local news, like the second, or it was like the first or second day, one of the reporters was saying that he was quoting law enforcement that the call for the unconscious person was one of the unalived victims. And when I kind of went a little bit further into like understanding who was at the scene. First responders that went in was not medical attention, it was police. So it wasn't like it was a trample of having EMS there and people like that, which I think
Yeah.
that's what a lot of people were believing.
Yeah, I almost thought like maybe campus police, even though it's off campus, I thought like maybe somebody who was like first responder showed up first, but it seemed pretty clear that like no, it's just the 911 callers, and then immediately Moscow police show up. So it's just interesting that and then it goes on to say multiple people. Okay, so the call was made from one of the surviving roommates' cell phones inside the residence. Multiple people talked with the 911 dispatcher before Moscow police arrived at the location. Officers entered the residence and found 2 victims on the 2nd floor and 2 victims on the 3rd floor. So this is where I get kind of like confused on how all these rumors of how they'd seen Xana and all, I don't know. And then when you think about Ethan's mother coming out first saying like this wasn't drug related, because there was like rumors that maybe they thought it was like an OD or something. So I'm like just confused at like how that all, I don't know, it just adds to this mystery. I just wanted to circle it back to the facts of the 911 call. And it's from multiple people, but it's not from the surviving roommates, but it's on their phone. Thoughts?
Well, I don't know. I thought it was kind of interesting hearsay information that was apparently relayed like from Christy through Daniel, was that Peter was the one that discovered them. And I think we were talking about what if he asked for them to grab a phone, call 911, and he took over and started talking. I mean, these were just kind of theories that were going around of maybe whoever discovered them wasn't the roommates, it was someone else. And that's why it wasn't them on the phone per se calling.
Because and I feel like you kind of touched on this, Amber, and I'm going to be completely honest, I kind of zoned out for a second, but wasn't there reports that it was a guy named Hunter, not Ethan's brother, but Ethan's best friend, who found Ethan and even checked his pulse?
That came from the Banfield source. Like Banfield did that months ago.
Okay.
But then it was also another source that spoke to the Gonsalveses spoke to Chrissy, and Chrissy stated that it was indeed Ethan's best friend who was called. They couldn't get, as far as I know, and don't take me verbatim, and Shay, correct me if I'm wrong, they couldn't get the door open. And so as far as Xana and Ethan's, and so Ethan's best friend, it was blocked. The door was blocked. That's the word that was used. And so he managed to get it open enough to peer his head in. And that is when he saw the scene. And it was Ethan blocking the door.
That's where I, again, struggle with what, or the potential blood trail. Was there a blood trail down that hallway? If so, I would think, again, everybody reacts differently, but I would think like the most likely scenario and logical thing would be, oh, we see this blood trail leading to Ethan and Xana's room. The door is closed. DM may or may not have is remembering what she heard. Let's go ahead and call police and not approach. So that's where I'm very curious what evidence is going to be outside of their bedrooms.
I agree, because it's not like anyone just floated out of the house.
Right.
Yeah.
But thank you, Duty Ron. Good night. Have a good night. I noticed somebody had said something about interesting how divided the chat is, considering we all kind of go to the same channels and chats and all that. And it's like, I feel like that's what ends up happening when we get to like a road, and like when we're just all waiting for the trial, like we start exploring different avenues and realizing like we all just want the truth. You know what I mean? Like we may not agree with certain things, but it just seems like ultimately like everyone is just fascinated with this case and they just want answers because it's just so unfathomable, like the whole ordeal. You know, you're thinking you're safe at night. I mean, how many, even at that age, like when you're kind of living on your own first and you have roommates and stuff, like any little noise, like I'm a very light sleeper. Like any little thing, like when I forget I start the dishwasher before I go to bed and then I hear it like click at the end, I like jump and I'm like, oh wait, yeah, I forgot I started the dishwasher. You know, it's like I wake at every little thing. So I can't imagine like their fear. And this kind of leads into like, I didn't think it at first, but now I'm starting to think that like maybe Kaylee did leave her room and go into Maddie's room because something was being heard.
See, I can't with that. Like, I really don't. I know a few people think that, but I've never been one to think that. I think that they shared carbonara in bed. They were calling Jack multiple times from their phone. Like, wouldn't it make more sense that they fell asleep together versus at one point they ended up separating since they were found together? I think it makes Occam's razor, it's a more simpler explanation because they ended up together. They started together. I'm more likely to believe that they stayed together that entire time versus separating at some point.
I mean, yeah, I initially thought like, yeah, they were sleeping in the same room, bedroom, they shared their meal, you know, and they were texting and calling Jack so close in range to each other that it would kind of seem like they were side by side.
Mm-hmm.
I know, like from the very beginning, I assumed that they had slept together, but then I will say that picture of her room when it's like zoomed in and it does look like her comforter was kind of folded down. I could see that going either way. And then maybe Murphy, was in Kaylee's room and maybe DM did hear her kind of shuffling with Murphy as she went into Maddie's room. But that's interesting to me. But I know in college, I slept with my best friend almost every single night. It was a small bed. We would just get home. And like back then we had computers, our laptops. We would kind of look and watch videos and then go to bed. But that's interesting to me. Like, will we ever know for sure if they were in the same room when Brian entered, or did Kaylee walk?
I think so, due to the blood spatter.
Okay.
If the attack started prior to Kaylee entering the room, I think that there will be evidence with the blood spatter and where it lands.
Yeah.
Versus if they were both in there, I think there will be evidence of blood spatter that occurred prior to the second body being there.
Okay, that's interesting for sure.
But that's just my opinion. I don't know. To be fair, I don't know.
No, I just think, once again, I mean, that's why I think we're all here. It's because the average person is just going to be like, okay, let's wait till trial. It is what it is. Watch some mainstream media and call it a day. But us on panel, the people in chat who are still so invested in this case, like, we understand we don't know everything. We understand they have more will likely come out, etc. But at the same time, while we wait, we are going to dig in and analyze every single thing that we know.
Right.
And one of the reasons why I thought maybe she was in her own room was because the dog was found in the other room. So I was just thinking that was sort of strange not to be in the same room with your dog. But again, it was a different night. Like, they were partying or whatever and eating and all that. So I don't know. It's just every little thing, like you said, we're just going to pick apart and be like, well, it could be this, it could be that. The whole like 911 thing, like I've even traveled down the idea that like it was made from a roommate's phone, but the roommate didn't want to be like recorded possibly. Like maybe what they know, or at that point, they just weren't ready to come out and say, you know what I mean?
Right. I think that was
like
an interesting
handed
point
off,
that
like,
you
here.
made in
I'm
the
sorry,
video.
what?
I thought that was a very interesting point that you made in your video was it a conscious choice possibly to not want to be the one recorded on that 911 call for whatever reason or another? But it was an interesting point.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be like, oh, they know more in like a bad way. Like, it could be that like what they did know, they were just putting together in their mind and they're like, oh my gosh, like that would sound horrible coming from me or something. You know what I mean? Because they were in the house when all this is going on. And knowing what we do know, what very little we know from what DM saw, like it might have just been coming to a head at that moment. You know what I mean? And they're like,
Right.
if I say this, like the cops are going to show up and think like, you're coming with me, maybe, you know? So it was like passed off to somebody else. Again, I'm just speculating. I just thought like, I don't know. I was like going on a mental tangent that week when I was just re-looking at this whole DM thing. It's just very weird. I don't understand it. And people literally have, because I've backed the victims and obviously I would, but you know, they've stated, and Steve has even said like these roommates are victims, you know? So I was like, okay, I'm not going to speculate too deep about DM. Then I had people saying, you're closed-minded, I'm unsubbing. Well, and I'm like, what am I not like seeing? Like, obviously it's weird, you know, but like, she's not the one who's arrested. So what am I supposed to do? And then like, I don't know what happened, but I was just thinking about it. And I'm like, you know what? I need to just put my thoughts out and see what people say. And it's like, again, just speculation. I make it clear that it is, but it's mixed in with statements and everything that kind of like, oh, could be that. So I just feel like that's the whole point of us following these cases. I like it much more when we get to trial, though. I'm not going to lie. Like, I've like compared cases that we've followed, like, and I know you guys have followed similar ones, but like the ones that go to trial, I just find better in a way because like you can hang your hat on the science coming forward, the statements from the investigators, the body cam footage, the police interviews. Like, I just cannot wait to get our hands on all that.
Oh, absolutely. And it could be the most tiniest, small, little thing that puts all of the pieces back together. You know, like there's so many holes, there's so many inconsistencies, but it really could be something very, very simple that puts it all together.
Agree. And I got a lot of backlash at first for questioning DM because I kind of questioned it right out the bat and right off the bat. And I got a lot of people who were not happy with me, even though I felt like I was being extremely fair. And I still, to this day, I do not think DM was like physically involved in any way. I don't think that she wanted them harmed. I just have questions about what exactly she heard, how she maybe didn't hear certain things that this camera picked up, and the delay. That's it. And now it just seems like a lot of people are kind of questioning it. And I think it's fair. She's an adult. It's especially once the PCA came out and we hear this 50-foot away camera heard these noises. It's like you're right down the hall. Then we learned she's on the second floor. It was just like a mountain of things. So I'm over here. I still have questions.
Yeah, that's a problem with sort of taking down the scene in a way, because people are the jurors, I'm sorry, they're obviously their opinion is what's going to matter. They're going to want to see, once they find out DM's information, like, okay, so what was it like for her to be standing, you know what I mean? And what would she have heard and seen, like, from this, like, peripheral view, etc. You know what I mean? So, and that's only the stuff that we know about. Whatever information DM has to say, like, outside of the PCA, I'm sure the jury is going to be like, okay, well, I want to make sense of this. And whether they show 3D diagrams, which I'm sure they will, and all that, everyone's going to want to know, like, why they waited so long to call 911. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. It does leave a lot of questions. I think everyone wants justice. And I think I just try to, I understand speculation. It's just, can we base it in facts and not go so far off the deep end where we are incriminating other innocent people and dragging the victims?
And that's a kind of why, like, when I started, I wanted to say, like, okay, I want to step into looking at other cases, including Long Island serial killer. Because like, it's like all this information I was supposed to add to my stream on Monday. And then that was going to be like my break for a little bit, because I feel like that's what I have to do until we get more information. Now, again, we talked about it earlier. There was some court documents. I don't know if Shave, you've seen it yet, but apparently I don't even know if it was on like the website yet, but T-Rev and JLR have gone through it, and it shows that they've sealed information in regards to something with Facebook. So that was sort of new-ish, like through the courts that we're finding out, but we don't know what that means, obviously, because it's been sealed. So I just want Now, when they give the alibi on the 24th, are they going to give that to the public, or is that also going to be sealed information?
Ooh, I don't know.
Because people are really waiting. I think a lot of people think that they're getting information on the 24th in regards to that, and I'm not so certain we are.
Well, that's if he's going to do an alibi defense. That's if it's presented as an alibi defense. It doesn't mean they're going to. He's only required to provide the alibi if it's an alibi defense.
See, I thought I had read something that it said that like Idaho or something like required it or something.
For an alibi defense, yeah. It depends on how they're going to like defend the case, like what their positioning is going to be.
Is that what they did for Lori Vallow? She did an alibi defense?
I did not follow Lori to that degree. I have a really hard time with the child killings. It's just really tough. There's only a few I've followed like that.
I know. That's why I'm not even going to get into the whole Gannon stuff, but I followed Gannon through other channels reporting of it, but it was something that I myself, like I couldn't, it's just different. Like when there's a child involved, but I don't know. I just felt like Lori was like told to present an alibi at some aspect, but either way, I don't think that we're going to get, okay, Idaho, Midwest Mima said Idaho requires a defense. Idaho requires a defense always. I don't know if you mean alibi defense or what you mean by that. I'm sorry. So Willie's saying he doesn't need an alibi.
Well,
No, Willie, you're talking about totality. He doesn't need an alibi, but if he is going to have an alibi defense, he needs to produce it. That's what they're saying.
yes, there's a difference in how the defense approaches the case, but does prosecution have to prove motive? No, that's always been kind of the deal with the murder. So first degree. Could that alibi defense be sealed though, is what malicious intent said. Mal, I think it would be sealed, honestly. I think with the media frenzy, even if he does provide it, I think it would be sealed.
Lori's alibi was she was at her apartment the night or went to Alex's apartment or something for Jesse. That like it came out like during trial.
People have opinions about
Midwest Mima is saying that Idaho requires the alibi, but I don't know. That's also what I had heard. Like even if you like other states do an alibi defense, but Idaho, from what I'm understanding, and it seems like Midwest, I don't know if it's true or not, but that's what I heard also, that it requires it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see, obviously, but she's saying it always requires it again. I don't know if that's 100%, but either way, let me play these clips too. Unless you guys had anything else to add.
Oh, I was just reading.
I've heard a little bit of feedback.
Oh, sorry. I was just reading Miss Behaven's comment because I thought it was really, relevant to what we're seeing kind of on the YouTube streets of theories about people have opinions about the roommates and they don't even know their story, but they have sympathy for Brian and they don't know his story. And I understand where she's coming from in that because I've had some frustration myself with that. That's all.
Yeah, I understand that too, for sure.
Back on this, that people are nervous about the timeline.
Okay, so here's another example of just go in your head for a second and pretend that there's stuff behind the scenes that aren't adding up to other people's statements. Just travel and pretend land for a second, because that's the vibe I'm getting from Steve in this little interview, and it was early on.
I just implore people to come forward, especially when you're even close to that timeline, because technology is the only thing that doesn't lie, really. It's just data. And then we can analyze it as a society and determine what it is, but it doesn't lie. It's just simply data. So it's better than
See, I found that phrase interesting. I know it could mean nothing, but he's saying like data doesn't lie. And I just thought that was interesting because like at this point, I don't think they had like a suspect or anything. So for him to like talk about like come forward and your data doesn't lie, like I just am like, are people's statements not adding up or something?
An eyewitness, it's better than anything that we can produce. It's right up. So it's better than an eyewitness. It's better than anything that we can produce. It's right up there with DNA. And I just implore you, sometimes even if you think that selfie has nothing in the background, maybe there's a car that should be there. That somebody said in their alibi, I parked right here next to this tree. And then there's that tree and there's not, your car's not there.
So what do you think? Doesn't that sort of sound like they're looking for more information to align with somebody's alibi or story, perhaps that isn't aligning with someone else's?
I could see that. But I also go back to the statements where Steve talks about the Wi-Fi, you know, and touching the Wi-Fi. So I don't know what he's referring to at that. Like, he's very good at leaving it open-ended, and it's caused a lot of rabbit holes to go down, you know?
Right, and stating that he knew who the target was but couldn't say. It's like, what? But then his attorney has come forward saying my clients don't know anything about the investigation or any more than you guys know.
There was also an interview, and I played it on a live, like right after BK was arrested. And he was saying now that they knew the name, they were seeing connection between him and Kaylee. But then I went back to it, and it's like scrubbed. The only way I can find it is through my live. I went shortly after and followed the exact same link, and then the link just now took you to the press conference. So I don't know. I do think that he is in such a pit of grief and everything that some things he says may be attributed to that. But at the same time, it's really interesting to kind of take his statements and think about them. And then Allie had said he also was kind of following the media and stuff, and that's a factor as well. Yeah, the Wi-Fi thing is interesting.
So was the Wi-Fi thing taken down? Because I'd seen somewhere that it was like deleted interview or something like that, and it was him saying that he had connected to their Wi-Fi 12 times or something, which everyone was saying. So he had the password, or they didn't have a secured Wi-Fi.
Right. I don't know.
And also, thank you, Natasha, for the super sticker. And I agree with what Alex was saying, that he was kind of repeating things that ended up like not being significant. I don't know. It's hard. I'm not judging like what he was stating. I just find it interesting that I feel like things behind the scenes could have been changing. Statements could have been changing behind the scenes. And that's why things had changed verbally. You know what I mean? Like it was just all over the place, which is like, I'll just wrap it all around. The Uber time had changed from the time that they got home. It being a private ride from initially reported from Uber obviously is strange too. The name of the rideshare was redacted in the Idaho one, but given out in the PCA in the Pennsylvania one. Give me a second. I just want to play like a few clips and then we'll just wrap it up. And it's pretty much going to show everything we talked about just in video form. So thanks guys for being here. If you guys need to hop down at all, don't be afraid to just say it. I'm just closing up with some clips and that's pretty much it.
Thank you.
Oh, yep. So what you want to do is we'll actually do this.
Cool. Thank you.
Absolutely.
That food truck video kills me because just knowing that what they were about to go home to, and I had no idea, and they were so happy.
Back again to this, he said that there was nothing out of the order.
So I just wanted to play the little rideshare information and kind of emphasize that, they even had the rideshare person get interviewed by media. So to me means that whatever he saw or heard really wasn't that significant that night. But when you look at the PCA and we kind of compare the two separate things, the rideshare and the Doordash, they've given absolutely no information and no one's given a single interview with speaking with anyone connected to Doordash.
Ordinary that night, that right now, in that moment, that it was just an innocent conversation. Of course, the frats were bumping on a Saturday night, but here at the house, it was quiet. The rideshare driver said that he knows Adam. He knows he's a bartender, but Adam was not brought up once at all during that conversation. Again, no conversations about boys, drama, or any trouble. And he said they were not fearful. They weren't skittish in any way. He said that it was actually a rather innocent conversation from the beginning. And really, he said that was the center of their conversation. The entire 5-minute ride home was about their mac and cheese carbonara that they were planning on splitting when they got back to the house. He said that he's picked them up in the past, not only these two girls, but Xana as well. And he said that in the past, they've talked about boys and drama and college life, but not this time around.
Moscow Police Department.
I just have to say, how sad that they were just so happy together. They weren't even worried about anything other than their mac and cheese. That is just so sad that they're gone,
Yeah. And how they gave us, the footage for them walking to the grub truck, like all these, the ride share and the grub truck kind of probably don't tie into things because it was so freely given to the public, you know what I mean? Which is interesting in itself because like we stated, like the Doordash, all these other things have been so like under wraps. It's just, the whole thing is just beyond mysterious and just sad, and a lot of people are divided in chat. Like I'm very open to everyone's opinions and I appreciate you guys. It's just very interesting, the different opinions. And for replay viewers, please comment below what you guys think about everything. Here is just an example of the emphasis on information that the roommates know. So it's just like a couple seconds of Thompson talking about it. And when we know everything, this was before the PCA came out. So now that we know everything that they know, and we know that the defense called Bethany for, they wanted to speak to her. They believe that she might have exculpatory evidence. His words now that he's going to say, it's kind of like something that they have. The case is pretty much being like hung on completely.
Whoever discovered the scene first, whoever initiated the contact with law enforcement is all part of understanding what occurred and the timeline of what occurred.
Bill Thompson here says the 911.
Even him saying who discovered the scene first is kind of interesting too.
That's a good catch right there. Interesting.
Thank you, love.
Roommate Dylan put out this statement to the news.
Okay, yeah.
I know somewhere Xana and Ethan are together,
I
keeping each
found
other
this-
company,
again,
watching
I'm not
us,
trying
and
to
telling us
overanalyze.
it's okay and that we have each.
I just think it's kind of interesting, her one statement that she put out. She doesn't really say much about Kaylee and Maddie besides inseparable duo. I don't know. To me, it's like looking at the statement now, she put more into Xana and Ethan. I don't know if you guys get what I'm saying here.
I think she may have hung out with them more. Like when I've gone back and looked at like even some of like the sorority pictures and parties, like she seemed to have a closer relationship with Xana just based on like some of the pictures and stuff I saw, which would kind of make sense like to me, you might be more gravitated to a certain person.
Yeah, definitely. And that's why I love having you guys on too. Cause like you guys, I haven't even gone down like much of their social media stuff. And I know that you guys definitely have. And that's why I love like getting your feedback about things. Cause like I look at it one way and then you're explaining it that way. And it's like, oh, okay, I guess that helps me kind of understand this more. So thank you, love. Anything from you guys?
No, you're pretty much covering everything. You're doing a phenomenal job.
Each other. Maddie and Kaylee, the inseparable duo, the
Thank
two
you.
best friends that were like sisters.
Oddly enough, the Mark Verman from the OJ case came out stating that Kaylee
So this is just showing how they expanded their search about the timeline between Ethan and Xana. Like it just seemed like they were just seeking a lot more information like at the end of the investigation before the gag order and everything and before they even arrested Brian. It just seemed like even after actually they were still kind of fishing for information about Xana and Ethan's whereabouts.
police come out asking for information from anyone who knows anything about Ethan and Xana's whereabouts before the crime took place.
And police asking the public to help them fill in key gaps in the timeline. A part of that timeline includes a party at a fraternity house.
The flag is at half-staff at the University of Idaho Sigma Chi fraternity house. Sigma Chi President Reed Offson says the fraternity is cooperating with the investigation.
I knew them. Ethan was always in our house. Xana was a good friend before Ethan even came up. But that's all I really want to talk about right now because I actually have class here in like 15 minutes.
Does anyone know where they were during that timeline? Like there's still this big chunk where...
As of right now, we've told Moscow PD, Idaho State Police, and the FBI all we know. We're kind of leaving it up to them to piece it together. Obviously, we don't have the utilities or resources to do it on our own, so we're just putting full faith in the officers and in the detectives doing it. But that's all I really know right now.
Are there any cameras around?
Not on the property.
You said Xana was a friend and Ethan was a member of the house? Okay, got it.
Yeah. Just real charismatic, real fun.
So yeah, guess I'll just wrap it up with finding it. I do find it strange that we haven't really got like the Corner Club video. We only have like a screenshot of that. Do you guys think that's weird?
I think it's interesting. It makes you question the same thing like you said earlier with the Doordash driver versus the private rideshare. We have more details with the private rideshare. We have a name in the Pennsylvania PCA with the private rideshare, but we don't know any details with the Doordash driver. So it's like, it's not just so much what they give us, it's what they don't give us and why. It may be a very simple reason and, or it may be something more.
Yeah. And it's more than just what law enforcement has given us. Like we've seen interviews and articles where they'll reference, that we spoke to the rideshare driver and blah, blah, blah. But like, we really know very little about Corner Club in a way. And I guess like JLR, somebody asked him recently to go back there and he was like, I can't go in there. They really don't they didn't want attention, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, yeah, obviously they don't want you like videotaping and all that maybe, but like maybe they have more information that they just don't want anybody in there like fishing for.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, I think both them and Matt Greek put out a statement, they were getting a lot of calls, and I could also find that that's pretty like invasive as well. Like, would you want to share the full footage and then people start depicting who all was there, like what happened with the food truck,
Yeah, that's true. Things can spiral out of control.
Yeah.
As we've seen. Even with the case with gag orders, things are spiraling. Well, I really appreciate you guys coming on, and I appreciate my moderators and chat and anyone who had an opinion and shared it. I, might not always agree, and my opinions obviously are just free flowing, and some of them just come to me when I'm speculating with you guys on panel or chat, and it's like I'm not set in anything until obviously we get it laid out in court and get presented with everything that the jury is going to see, which obviously is going to be what matters in the long haul. And hopefully 12 people, and this is if he doesn't sign a plea deal, gather the information and make sense of, and everything makes sense to them, and they can get justice for the victims.
Absolutely. I'm going to jump down so you can say your goodbyes. So thanks for having me up.
Yes, thank you so
Thank
much,
you so
Amber. It's
much.
been lovely. Thank you for having me.
No problem. Thank you. And if I ever get the chance to have you guys on again, I'll try to organize it a little bit better. But I appreciate you guys being so last minute and able to come up. And you too, Kelly. Thank you for all your expert opinion. I feel like you guys all have like a really expert opinion on this case, which is why I'm so glad I got you all in like one time here. So thank you so much, guys.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Have a great night.
Bye, everybody.
I'll see you later, Melissa Jade. You're going live.
Yeah. I'll see
Okay,
you
yeah,
there.
I'll be there. And everyone else, go to Melissa Jade. We're continuing an important discussion over there regarding this case too. So
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right. I'll talk to you guys soon.
bye, guys.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, Kelly. And bye, chat. I appreciate you guys. And yeah, if you haven't subscribed or hit like, please do so. We're going to talk very soon. This isn't the only case that we're following all the way through. We're following other cases, and I have a Facebook group too where we discuss even more cases there in a Facebook forum. So I'll link that in the description box, and I hope to see you guys soon, probably later this week. It's not going to be a morning live like we usually do. So until school's back in session and everyone kind of gets back into an autumn flow and not summer flow, I think the time is going to be kind of sporadic when I go live. But I will let you know, and I appreciate everyone being open-minded and kind to each other. And yeah, if you have nothing nice to say, don't say anything at all. That's what I like to live by. So we'll talk soon, everybody. And thank you again to my panel guests. And I'll see you guys in the YouTube streets probably. So bye.